I am Joey Amato. I'm the publisher of Pride Journeys. We are a syndicated travel column, and I also am a publicist. So I come at my editorial from a PR perspective as well.
Pride Journeys. Talk more about that.
Pride Journeys. So I used to publish physical magazines, print magazines, years ago, and the one aspect that I enjoyed the most was the travel section. So about 4 years ago, I started Pride Journeys. And I now partner with other LGBTQ media around the country to syndicate my content. So a destination will bring me to their city. I will write one article, and it could be in 10 to 12 different LGBTQ publications around the country.
So are you an influencer?
No.
You're not?
I'm a journalist.
What separates you from that?
I am not. I do influencer things when I visit a destination. I do some video content, some photos, but I don't have those numbers that some influencers have. My reach is through syndication, through online and print readership. It's not through social media platforms.
All right. Laura Fernandez, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Please welcome Laura Fernandez to the stage.
My first Thrive.
Very good. Explain to us who you are, what you do, and why you're here talking to us today.
So my name is Laura Fernandez. I actually live here in Las Vegas. So it was a nice 20-minute drive to the new, beautiful Las Vegas Convention Center. I hope everyone is enjoying their time. And if you need Vegas tips, let me know. My role is head of industry for travel tourism. So I work on the advertising side, and I oversee the travel tourism strategy for SiriusXM, Pandora, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. So Stitcher is a podcast app as well as content developer. So we create shows like Conan O'Brien, Oprah, Andy Cohen. So some of those top podcast shows we actually produce, as well as having the app. So from the travel tourism, I work on the advertising side. So if you hear or see a travel ad, whether it's a destination or accommodation brand, that's my team. And me personally, I've always loved music and never was a musician. Clarinet didn't cut it for me. So I've always been in advertising sales and always have been a part of the music platform side because I am very passionate about the platform and music and audio as a whole, especially now when we're living in these really uncertain times and everyone's in a weird headspace. I believe in audio as, a source of relief. It's a mood, lifts your mood. I mean, I will tell you, if you're not listening to music in between Zoom meetings, like you're missing out. And I'm so passionate about these platforms, not only because of the company culture, but also when you're reaching consumers in an environment where they feel good. I don't know how many times I say I'm deleting Facebook or Instagram off my phone, but I've never said I'm going to delete my Pandora app, or if you listen to Spotify, I'm deleting Spotify, because music is such a source of comfort. And I love podcasts. That's been new for us this past year, is learning what is available through podcasts. And we have ways to target LGBTQ+.
Let me jump in there.
Sorry,
you were going there.
I can keep going.
You were going there naturally. So talk us through right there, and then Joy will do the same for you. How is it? So that group, that family of outfits there, Pandora, Sirius, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Tell me, how do you identify an LGBTQ+ listener, and what separates the way you guys do it from, say, other streaming services or music services?
So I'm going to speak specifically about Pandora, our digital music streaming.
How many Pandora members are out? How many people subscribe to Pandora? How many people listen for free? I'm just curious.
Good.
Okay.
That's actually who I care about.
Yeah. that's where I was going.
Yeah. And the way that we target for LGBTQ+, Pandora specifically, we have a logged in user. So when you registered with Pandora, you put your birth date, your zip code, your gender, and your email. We collect over 1 billion data points daily from our listeners of music preferences.
Billion?
Billion.
A day?
A day from our listeners. Because you're engaging with the app of thumbs up, thumbs down, you're creating new stations. So we get all these of what devices that they're listening to, like whether they're listening in home or in car. There's so many different segments that we can pull in. For LGBTQ+, specifically, Our Pride Affinity segment is a combination of, we have about 15 plus Pride stations, whether it's Pride Pop or Pride Indie. And so if you've added one of those stations, so that's one of the attributes. If you're listening to an artist that indexes high with LGBTQ+, whether I'm going to say an Elton John or Lady Gaga, these are, or if you're interacting with a station, it's almost like lookalike targeting. So that's how we build it out. It's not perfect, but then we also map it back to a listener survey where we actually ask people, are you LGBTQ+, do you fall in one of the communities? And that's then how we track it back. And we also can target by ethnicity as well for Hispanic and then African American.
And that goes back to the Music Genome Project,
Yes.
right? So talk, because I remember this when we started talking about it, but refresh us what that was.
Yeah, Pandora, I've been with the company for 9 years. Actually, was with Pandora before SiriusXM acquired us about 3 years ago. And what's so special about Pandora? Pandora was the first digital streaming app on the scene. And Tim Westergren, our founder, created this. It's called the Music Genome Project, where we actually have musicians behind us that went to Juilliard's, Berklee School of Music, that are mapping out the DNA to each song. 450 attributes go into each song. So when you have that listening experience of like thumbs up and your thumbs down, and you really get that personalized listening experience. And that's what is really unique to Pandora, because if you go to, now we do incorporate AI into that, but that was the biggest differentiator, is the humans behind it,
right.
Because all these other streaming
We're
apps
we're algorithms.
were computer generated. And we were all about the personalized listening experience, because everyone has such a unique way to listen and consume music.
So Joey, jump in here for us if you would. What we're talking about is the interface, and you guys come at this from very different places. You are big data, you are national, and probably international, aren't you? Are there some countries we
Stitcher, but everywhere else we were just U.S. domestic.
Okay, all right. And you're approaching this thing from two completely different angles. Joey, walk us through what you, in terms of how do you target who is, because I asked you if you're an influencer and you said no because you do it differently, and theirs is something along the line of an influencer. But compare and contrast how they would target something versus how you would target what you do.
Well, I think something really important to point out is that about 30 years ago, when LGBTQ marketing became trendy, there was a one-size-fits-all approach. And companies like American Airlines and the pioneers in LGBTQ marketing did one thing and it worked for everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, based on what you're saying, there's so many different ways to market to the community. You know, what I listen to as a 40-year-old, 41-year-old gay white man is something different than that 40-year-old gay white man. You know, he may like Madonna, I like Kylie. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many different ways to segment the community now, whether it's the L, the T, the B. Mm-hmm. Having multiple sources and multiple ways to market to these people is wonderful. There is no one size fits all anymore.
All right, so I mean, the name of this piece is the do's and don'ts. Give me two, and I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit, but you're smart and you can handle it. Tell me two things. Tell me two don'ts of LGBTQ marketing based upon your job every day.
We do a good amount of research on our listeners. We actually have our own panel. It's entitled The Soundboard for Pandora specifically. We have 70,000 opt-in members where we use it to gain insights across all our listeners. And we actually ask that question of like, what are brands not, what are they not doing well to reach LGBTQ plus consumers? And at the top of the list was authenticity. And that they didn't feel like the brand was being authentic. And then secondly was not representing and showcasing what they're doing for the communities year round.
Do you share that with the advertisers?
Oh yeah, I mean,
do.
That's one of my biggest things is like, from an advertising side, if you're coming to a platform, you need to understand how that platform's audience engages and how they travel, or you need to understand that consumer, and then that those insights will help you figure out your marketing, because we may know that an LGBTQ plus consumer actually listens more, over-indexes with listening in home on connected home speakers, like in Amazon Alexa, Google, Sonos. So then we can take those insights and figure out the strategy around that.
And on that same note, are there day parts that are more popular with LGBTQ plus than other day parts? I'm just curious in a very general way.
Weekends definitely spike, and I go back to in-home, but it's a slight over-index against general population, and we also have data from, we're still all at home,
right, and
we're still all listening to music and podcasts at home, so that data is pretty same across all different audiences.
What about cars? Is it still big in auto listening?
Pardon?
Is it still big listening in auto?
Yes. Sirius XM, it's in a car. It is an in-car platform and subscription base. And Pandora specifically, our largest platform is mobile, followed by in-home, and then desktop, tablet, and then actually in-car.
Let's talk about your platforms. Talk about how those work for you. Do you segment by your different platforms, or do you put it all in the same, or what's?
I have one main syndicated list that I go to. So those include online-only outlets, print outlets, national, local. So my articles could be on a national outlets or a local. It really doesn't matter.
Print or digital?
Print or digital. Sometimes both.
Okay.
Grab Magazine in Chicago does mine in print and online every month.
Do you ever write something specifically for print or for specifically for digital?
No, it's one article.
It's platform agnostic.
Yeah.
Anything.
But back to what you were saying about being authentic. That's the number one thing from everybody. Every marketer is going to tell you that. Be authentic. And we are not gay one day a year. Yeah. That's so true for a lot of companies, a lot of destinations. We are gay 365.
Although I'm guessing for both of you, June is a very busy month. No, I'm being serious. Like the amount of articles you might place in June, or the advertisers you might have in June for Pride Month. Is there a groundswell there for either?
It's actually interesting because I got a lot of destinations invite me to come to their Pride events. I would rather not.
Right. Because
I want to push people to their Pride events. I would rather a destination invite me 3 or 4 months prior to their event, so by the time my article goes into syndication, they may get some of my readers coming to their destination.
That is a great point, because there have been so many fam trips for LGBTQ plus journalism, right, Ed? Where they say, hey, come to our Pride, but that's a great takeaway.
I'm a marketing guy. I'm reversing it.
Right, come in advance of Pride.
I want to make y'all money.
Cover it, and plus it'll save you from having to go to one more Pride, right? I mean,
and this is going to sound bad, but...
So speak up.
Yeah. So you don't get the local experience when you come for a Pride festival. It's tourists, it's everybody. I want to visit a city on a normal Wednesday, where there's nothing going on. That's how I'm going to get the most authentic experience of that city.
And does your advertising revenue swell in June, at least on the LGBTQ plus initiative?
Yes, but I wish I could say even more, like that I would like to even see it more, but that's where we have Pride stations so brands can come in and actually sponsor all of them. And we are starting to see those sponsorships run year round. So you have that ownership and your audio ads are served in those stations. It's, completely exclusive. But that's where I do believe from a travel brand perspective, and I know this is all about marketing, and I wish that more travel brands had an LGBTQ plus strategy. And that's something that, for me, that's why I'm here. And I want to be not only educated for myself, but then for us is so much is that of this education goes into educating our marketers and educating them on why they need to have a strategy. And then Joey, you and I were talking about from a creative standpoint of like making sure the creative matches the audience that you're reaching and trying to target. And that's my one piece of, I would love from a travel marketing perspective to see more.
And something so easy to do is from a destination, just put up a page on your site for LGBTQ tourists. It costs nothing to do, and it's so easy, so simple. And going back to what was said earlier today, especially if you're a destination like a Cedar Rapids or an Oklahoma City or somewhere that isn't a well-known LGBT destination, people traveling there, even though you say you're gay friendly,
right,
doesn't mean the hotels are, doesn't mean the restaurants are, doesn't mean the community is. So if you have an LGBTQ landing page on your site, you have to reach out to these restaurants, these hotels, do our job for us, and tell us which destinations in your city are LGBTQ friendly, where I can go with my partner and they're not going to look at me like I'm crazy.
So let's talk about reach for a minute, because you guys have crazy different reaches in what you do, I'm guessing, which makes this conversation
bigger than mine.
Well, I'd go out on a limb and say a little bit. So like a good placement for you would have what kind of eyeballs on it? What do you think?
Ironically, I live in Indianapolis now. My best article, reach-wise, was my Indianapolis article a few years ago. I had 15 or 16 outlets pick it up.
Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
Normally, on average, I'll get 10 to 12.
Okay.
So between print and online, that equates to 200,000 people around.
Okay.
So from a destinations perspective, you bring me in, I do one article, you reach potentially up to 200,000 people.
Which is a weekend print edition of, by comparison, San Francisco Chronicle or something? It's a pretty decent circulation. That is. Now your numbers on that.
Across all our platforms, unduplicated, and then in the US, 150 million. And that's now, we're going to drill this down, is if we're looking at LGBTQ plus pride affinity segment, 7 million. And around, I think when we last pulled numbers, it was around 3 to 4 million for Hispanic and around 2 million for Black LGBTQ. Again, these are our audience segments, and that's Pandora specifically. That 150 million is across all our platforms, unduplicated audience.
And I know we talked about it a little bit when we were sitting there. It's kind of a more blunt instrument than we think it is, right? Are you able to segment trans out of that, or is that just grouped into the LGBTQ plus, or how would you approach
that? It is,
that?
and you and I were talking about this in Atlanta, but it's, right now it is one LGBTQ plus pride affinity segment. I would love to, as we grow the audience, is to separate the G and the L, and to make sure that we really are honing in on the correct audience. But right now, when I'm talking to travel marketers and destinations specifically, I just want them to have a strategy. Right. And that's my goal. I want to get more granular, and I have a lot of confidence that one day we're going to get that granular with our targeting.
Do you have in-house teams that can do LGBT marketing strategies for them, or how does this work?
Oh, yeah. We have our full in-house, and this is all added value to media spend, our own in-house audio consultancy called Studio Resonate. And Studio Resonate can copyright, produce, help. And that's where I say, we have the insights onto who these consumers are. We do our own research. We also do a lot of listener studies. And from what creative performs better, I am a big, what I'm seeing a lot more of is pre-campaign testing. It's through a company called Veritonic. And you actually see how audio creative performs, audio display video creative performs against specific audiences that you're trying to reach. So you know that the ad is going to be effective.
Veritonic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you A/B test? Will you one off of the exact same demo bounce A and B?
Yes.
So which one?
I am very. That is one of my biggest suggestions to marketers. There are specific campaign minimums to come into play, but But back to our creative, we know what performs well with our audience. So my first conversation is like, you need to lean on the publisher or the platform to help you create an audio spot that's going to resonate with that audience. And that's what our consultancy does.
And I'm just for full disclosure, for those of you who aren't in marketing speak, A/B testing is you have the exact same group, you feed them 2 different ads and see how they respond. It will give you an incredible amount. I agree with you. It is the most underused and most inexpensive thing to do in marketing is send 2 of the same groups, the exact same ads wrapped in different packages, and see what the response and open rate is. Even changing the headline sometimes can dramatically affect what the response is.
And also keep in mind, this is a long-term game.
Yeah.
Good point.
You can't take out an ad on Sirius or in Out Magazine or in any one of DJ's publications or whatever, do one ad and expect everybody in the community to come flocking to your destination. It's 5-10 years sometimes before things start to turn around. Fort Lauderdale didn't become Fort Lauderdale overnight. Richard Gray down there has been in his role for decades, making Fort Lauderdale an LGBTQ destination. It takes a while.
It's a brand strategy.
It's a
not
strategy.
A campaign. Yeah. That's a tremendous point to make, and I think because most people don't see it that way or see it that clearly, there's a lot of mistakes made in that space. They think they can be one and done. They can get in and out. Let me ask you this as well. I'm terribly fascinated by the idea of how the ads are served up across all those platforms. So, for example, if I wanted to target anybody listening to Barbra Streisand in Topeka at 2 a.m., I could buy that ad?
You could. I wouldn't say you should. I am...
Barry Manilow then.
Yes.
Barry Manilow. Right. Yeah.
I definitely, you have to remember with especially digital audio, people are listening at all times of the day, all across all devices, and you don't want to get too granular with your targeting
because
and your
limits.
message. Yeah, it
Yeah.
limits. It limits your reach. And a lot of destinations will target by feeder markets. For example, Colorado Office of Tourism last year actually had to pivot their strategy to target only in-state residents. But majority of destinations are targeting their feeder markets. But yes, you can get granular. Now, podcast, you can't get as granular. Podcast ads, it's pretty much like an endorsement. You hear the host read the ad. But now with podcasts, there's a ton. There are so many podcasts out there. And it's such a small percentage that are getting like the massive downloads, whether it is like an Andy Cohen show or a Conan O'Brien or Oprah. But there's still an audience that's listening to all these other podcasts. So the targeting for podcasts has come so far. We have our own podcast network. In addition to the shows that we create.
Now that's Stitcher, is that Stitcher?
So Stitcher, and so there's hundreds and hundreds of podcasts. We can now get as granular as transcription targeting. So if you're talking about travel, like say this random podcast that no one's ever heard of, but they're talking about travel. Now with transcription targeting, you can actually serve an ad to that person that's listening.
Oh, interesting.
And that's what gets really exciting because podcasts, here's the challenge is like, there's only that small percentage of shows that can really have host-read ads. And so you're gonna be sold out for a long time because they can only do a certain amount of like host-read ads. So then you look into just regular audio advertising and you get into the transcription. It's fun.
So Laura, that's speech recognition on a podcast
Yes.
and search by keyword through the transcription of.
It's keywords.
Wow.
But it's all voice recognized. And the keyword, it's wild. But that's what I get excited about podcast targeting is
Right.
because everyone goes, you know what, I want to do a host read ad. I want to do a live read. There's a lot of other people listening to smaller podcasts.
And here's an efficient way by either category targeting or transcription targeting.
I didn't even know that existed. That's
Yeah.
pretty exciting to hear. Joey, who are you writing for and how do you target people specifically? I mean, when you have a piece on something that might be of a interest to it, let's say a certain age group or certain geo, demo, whatever, psychographic, talk us through, do you ever slice and dice it like that?
I don't really, I do age rather than gender. I target 30 to 55.
Okay.
And when I go to a destination, I do not write solely about LGBTQ activities.
But is that your ultimate audience?
Sorry?
Is LGBTQ your ultimate
Yes,
audience?
that is my
It
ultimate audience.
Okay.
Every publication that prints my content is LGBTQ.
Okay.
But I cover arts, entertainment, culture, history, in addition to the LGBTQ nightlife and community.
And what makes it LGBTQ? Is it your view, or is it the people you're writing for, or is it the coverage? I mean, how do you, where does the LGBTQ live in what you do?
It's more so it depends on the city.
Okay.
So some cities may not have any gay bars.
Right.
So I have to write about LGBTQ friendly attractions. Some cities are not, if it's a San Francisco, it's easier. If it's Palm Springs, it's easy.
Sure.
But some cities that I've been to may only have one gay bar. Colorado Springs.
How many gay bars does Cedar Rapids have? Oh, they're in a
listening.
sidebar.
They're in a sidebar over there. Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids.
How many gay bars do you guys have in Cedar Rapids? Gay bars. All right. Okay. So it's like
there you go.
you were talking about.
So
Yeah.
I'll have to find other activities to write about that will be of LGBTQ interest to put in the article.
So okay. So you guys are coming at this really, really crazy different places, which is kind of fun. Have you ever been on a podcast? Do you go on podcasts to talk about what you do?
I have been on a few podcasts to talk about LGBTQ marketing and PR and
Were they
strategy.
LGBTQ podcasts? or
No, they just wanted to talk about LGBTQ issues on that. It was a mainstream podcast.
And how far afield do you go from travel? I mean, it's that all of a sudden that you're in some sort of quasi-political space and it goes into something social or political very quickly when you were an LGBTQ writer or purveyor of LGBTQ anything. Did you ever get
I
in
take
those?
politics out of all of my editorial. Not in my social media, but that's my personal space. But I never include anything political in my content.
And isn't the act of deciding what you're covering, doesn't have that a political bent to it automatically, or no?
Not necessarily, because a lot of the destinations I go to are, they're blue cities and red states. So I don't, like we were saying earlier, we don't want to boycott any cities because there's LGBTQ people there.
So you would assume as easily write a destination piece about going to the George H. Bush Presidential Museum as you would the Bill Clinton Presidential Museum?
If it's in a destination, I would surely write about it.
All right. So you don't pre-edit to think of what would be of greatest.
If I know it's something that hurt our community in some way, then I would.
Okay. So you do
edit
have
it
some
out.
at least 30,000
yes.
foot editorial.
I don't do everything a publicist tells me to do.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
If something doesn't make sense for me, I won't write about it. Ironically, I was at a destination that brought me to a Hamburger Mary's. Well, first of all, I was the only.
You're blushing a little bit right now.
I don't like Hamburger Mary's. That's not my. I would rather go to the Packer game in Lambeau Field than go to Hamburger Mary's. But they assumed that I liked drag, and I will watch drag, but to sit in a restaurant for 3 hours and watch a show is not my cup of tea.
But let me push back. Can you blame them given what you do?
No.
Okay.
However, there wasn't anybody at their tourism board who was LGBTQ. So instead of reaching out to somebody in the community, a thought leader,
Sure.
they just assumed that I did like certain things.
Okay.
Or they could have asked me.
Okay.
They didn't think to do that.
But they were thinking, now I'm not playing, I am a little bit devil's advocate, but they were thinking this is an LGBTQ plus kind of purveyor of information that will give it to the LGBTQ community. Mm-hmm. In our estimation, Hamburger Mary's would score a 10 and the Packers game would score a -3 in this space.
And in
general.
Right? That'd be correct.
Okay.
In this particular city, the LGBTQ community had brunch at a different location.
I see.
The Bachelorettes went to Hamburger Mary's.
Okay.
So there was really no way for them to know that really unless they asked.
Got you. All right. Wow. That is a very granular example of, and wow. Okay, we'll have to talk football later. Pulling back out for a larger discussion, in terms of your advertisers and your advertising base, when someone comes to, I mean, it's just those touch points. I can't even imagine 1 billion touch points a day, 150 million listeners. This is a massive machine. Not to dehumanize it, because it comes from a place, like you said, where the differentiator is, it comes from the Music Genome app to start. And I remember that app too. Is it still functional or no?
Oh yeah, well,
it is.
So Music Genome Project is the algorithm
Right.
that is Pandora.
Okay.
And that personalized listening experience.
Okay. So someone comes in and you are, tell me your title again, North America?
So it is Head of Industry Travel Tourism.
That's a pretty big position you have there across some very important brands there. What is your greatest, I mean, maybe you can answer this on a business level, but I am curious, you guess. What is the greatest overhead for that entire network there? Is it solely tech? Is it solely just the technical part of it?
For the actual platforms, I mean, we have our sales team,
Right.
we have our music curators, and then for SiriusXM we have our hosts. But yeah, it's a big company.
And rights?
Yes.
How does rights work for you?
You know what? Probably I'm not the best person to ask from a
Okay.
licensing standpoint. I know
Right.
it costs us a lot of money. That is my extent of the knowledge there, but it would be a great follow-up for me to get you some answers there.
Then let me come at it from this.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to get to is something that
Yeah.
you said earlier. You said, when I said how many people subscribe to Pandora and how many people don't, and you said those are the people I'm interested in, is one who don't, and why, and what is the percentage?
So from an advertising side, we speak to, it's addressable audience. If you, 87% of our audience is not paying for the subscription for Pandora. I'm just talking about Pandora specifically right now. And SiriusXM is a subscription-based model. There's no free version of SiriusXM unless we do our promotions. Pandora was set out to be a free, we're an advertising platform first. And that's why we make sure our targeting is as precise, our ad products. You're never going to be served more than 2 audio ads within one sitting. I mean, that was why we set out, because if you listen to terrestrial radio, you can sometimes listen to like 8 to 10 minutes of commercials. So it's only around like 87%. That's our addressable audience. So when someone says, whether they compare us to another music platform that's a subscription-based model, I'm like, awesome, they have a really big number, Spotify, a big number, but how much is that actually addressable? And how many are people actually going to be hearing or seeing your ad? So that's the aha moment from an advertising standpoint. I'm like, great, you post these big numbers, but how many people are actually going to be served your ad?
And Spotify is a different model, correct? Am I correct in that, right? It
You
is
are.
subscription.
Yes, it's a subscription-based model.
Right.
They still have a sales team. They still sell ads. They have podcasts, but it is very heavy subscription base.
And Pandora is still $4.95 a month, something like that? What is it? I mean, it's just on my credit card now.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
think
what
it's around $4.99.
$4.99 a month.
Yeah, that's just the radio, and then you can plus it up to be. Good question. I'm not false. I'm not.
That's right.
Incorrect there.
I'm sure you.
Yeah,
don't pay
I'm like,
for it.
oh my gosh, I don't know how much we are.
Right. Yeah.
But then you can also plus up to have the on-demand, so you can actually create your playlist if you pay a little bit more. But what I love is that if you want to hear a song right now instead of the personalized radio, you can actually be served an ad. So the listener gets a brand can sponsor. It's called sponsored listening, where you can actually give a listener an hour of uninterrupted listening if they watch a video ad.
Right.
It's the same as it's rewards-based advertisement.
Yeah. If you listen to this ad for Hyundai, I'll let you listen to Barry Manilow for 30 minutes, right?
Yep.
Okay. Second Barry Manilow reference today, by the way. No, but I thought that was important to share with this group because I was surprised to learn that model is so completely different. So let me just keep going on this and I'll get back to him for a minute. But So what am I then? What are the people who pay for Pandora for those services? What are we to you? Are we invisible? Because we don't get ads.
No, from an advertising standpoint, I am at the company, I'm excited that we have that subscription base. But I work on the advertising side, so I care about you, but not a whole lot.
But
Yeah.
And I'd pay that a day to avoid ads, says the marketer. But that's been holding pretty steady, right? By that 87 to 90% in there, right? It's not, you guys aren't hemorrhaging. The free product is so beautifully designed.
Yes,
people will suffer through it.
It was a good thing. It's hard from a streaming side to make money, and that's why we are on the advertising side. SiriusXM, we were lucky with that acquisition. SiriusXM is an incredible company, but we were very lucky when we were acquired.
Does Lance Bass still have his show?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay, because that was very popular on Sirius.
I think he does still have the show.
Okay. What's next for you? Are you going to continue doing what you're doing? Do you consider growth of your platform or your product? How would you grow from where you are right now?
Well, this year, for the first time ever, I do an online travel directory. This is my third year doing it, and I've never printed it before. So on your tables right now is the first ever printed version of the LGBTQ travel directory. Over 70 destinations are in there from around the world. Not too many international yet, but a lot of US destinations that I've never even heard of. Places in Mississippi that I can't even say. It's those smaller to mid-sized cities that want to attract LGBTQ tourism that are reaching out to me right now.
And so you think that's the future, is getting much smaller? We were talking about this earlier, smaller destinations coming on board?
Matt and I were actually talking before.
Yeah.
COVID forced a lot of people outside the cities into these smaller cities and smaller towns, and they're probably going to stay there. So we think the whole market may have shifted, and now you're going to have people flocking to Tempe, Arizona, flocking to Oklahoma City, Kansas City. They may not want to go to, they might not want to go back to live in their big city destinations.
Right. And that's interesting that you went to a printed product. When we were talking with Gaycation earlier, and they're getting away from printed product, that's an interesting backpedal.
This is just a one-time thing.
Oh, it's just a promo piece.
It's a promo piece for me, pretty much.
All right. No, I get that.
No, I used to publish magazines, and they were always profitable, but it wasn't. I forgot if DJ said this earlier. The margin is so small in profitability. It just doesn't, between distribution, and it's just so much work. And
no, I get you.
I'm not going to be in that market again.
Laura, what does the next couple of years hold for you guys if you had a crystal ball in front of you?
I really do. I said in the very beginning, I am so passionate about audio, and I think that there is, and we're seeing is a shift in people consuming a lot of audio, whether it's podcasts or music. And for my role with travel tourism and then working with travel marketers, I'm like, you have to have a multicultural strategy, you have to have an LGBTQ plus strategy, and to Joey's earlier point, it's like this one size fits all mentality can't exist anymore. And that's really my ultimate goal, and to continue making sure these travel marketers understand that and using us from a creative standpoint and using us for our research. That's one of my main goals for the vertical.
Isn't it interesting though, because I'm sitting here thinking as you're speaking, every marketing conference I go to, whether it's LGBTQ plus or not, talks about the power of video and the need for video. Do you ever see any of those four going into the video space?
Well, we can serve video ads from the advertising side, but what audio is a way to reach people where visual media is not able to. When you're running, you're working, you're cooking, you're cleaning, like driving. And that's, when I first started the vertical, especially for travel and destinations, that they were like, we have a visual strategy, we want to just showcase it. Awesome, we have some video products for that, but what about reaching people when they're driving, they're working, they're in their home entertaining people?
Like that's a big piece of everyone's day. And you know people are listening to a ton of audio. It's grown like 32% over the past year. So you have to think of like all the pieces that come into play with your overall marketing strategy.
I have one more thought. If I could jump in.
Yeah.
As an emerging destination, don't try to be the biggest city and attract everybody under the LGBTQ rainbow. Pick a letter. You know, maybe you could be, as an emerging destination, maybe you could be the queer destination or the bi destination. It's going to cost millions of dollars for an emerging city to try to attract everyone. And it's something that they may not have in their budget. So why not try to focus it, pinpoint it, and say, you know what, let's go after the lesbian market. Let's go after the trans market.
That's very
specific. And
specific.
Just focus on one thing rather than everybody.
And what would your one takeaway as we leave here? What would if someone came to you carte blanche and said, I've got a checkbook and I have no idea what I'm doing, how would I go about the LGBTQ plus crowd?
Utilize our targeting is to, again, reach this audience, as well as think outside of just your typical media plan. And that's where explore new mediums like, it's not a new medium, but explore mediums like podcast. And go outside of just host read ads, like explore transcription targeting, explore like category targeting.
That's very exciting. Do we have any questions? We have a little bit of time because we have on the back of this, we have another president and then a break, but we do have questions. Ed Salvato.
You both mentioned authenticity, the importance of authenticity. Can you give an example, either maybe your creative studio, helping someone become more authentic from like something that felt inauthentic to, wow, that was authentic. And both of you, if you can give an example of what that means for all those of us in the audience.
For the people watching through the live stream and for the recording, Ed's question was about authenticity. Can they give examples of people being authentic or not?
So I want to bring up something really quick about that. There's always going to be a first time. There's going to be a first advertisement. There's going to be a first time a destination welcomes somebody to the community. Think about it from a corporation perspective. 25 years ago, Cracker Barrel was not LGBTQ friendly, nor was Dollar General. Now they rank very highly on the HRC index. There's always going to be, you got to start somewhere. So just start and then worry about it. But do it authentically. Reach out to leaders in the community, thought leaders, let them make the ad for you, get their input, and then use that and push that out to the world.
From a voice, I'm going to talk about the audio perspective, is voice talent is key. And having an authentic voice, and that's where you need to lean on the publisher and the platform to help you and to really define, again, who your audience is. I'm going to speak really quickly to from a multicultural standpoint, because I do believe this was a really big thing that our brands did from an audio creation standpoint, is stand up for sonic diversity. While 40% of the population is multicultural, majority of audio ads are all white people. And we are actually choosing to put a voice of BIPOC voice to record the audio ad first. And that's one thing that I really was proud for the company that they're doing. But leaning on the publisher, you have to lean on the publisher and go into the pre-campaign testing, because the pre-campaign testing is going to tell you if the audio ad is authentic, and it will drive visitation for the destination or whatever goal a travel brand's trying to accomplish.
That's fascinating, audio diversity. I never stopped to think about that either, about accents. When you hear something disembodied from a physical image, what brings to mind and what is the authentic moment there? Wow, that must be some serious discussions. Ed, did you have a follow-up on that one? Okay. Were there any other questions? This was, again, just an amazing, I love the angularity of this conversation, coming at it from two completely different perspectives, but also leaving us with some great takeaways. And I also would like to thank Laura for the other person not wearing socks today. So thank you for being here. And Joey Amato, guys, let's give him a nice round of applause.